Mutual Broadcasting System presents The Zero Hour. Sponsored in part by
General Motors Safe Driving, Delco, and MEM. This is The Zero Hour on Mutual Radio.
I'm Rod Serling. You're listening to The Zero Hour. Rest your eyes. Exercise your imagination. This week, Kenneth Fearing's study of a deadly obsession. Desperate Witness. Starring Richard Crenna. Keenan Wynn. And Julie Adams. In Elliot Lewis's production of The Zero Hour. This week, a tale set in the frenetic, high-pressure world of big business, where the individual is a desperate single figure at the mercy of a ruthless organization. This is the story of George Stroud. He has a choice. Reveal himself and expose his fraudulence, or attempt to cover his tracks and run. For George Stroud, the choice is out of his hands and into those of the big clock, that impersonal, bloodless symbol of time. George Stroud is about to become both the hunter and the quarry. Our story, Desperate Witness, begins after this word.
Hi, everybody. This is Tony Butala of the Letterman. Medical care for veterans. Who is eligible to receive it? If you're a veteran or related to a veteran, this information may help you look ahead to the day when you can use VA medical care. The VA hospital system is responsible for taking care of veterans who are injured or who became ill while in the service. Their needs always come first. Next are veterans who can't afford to pay for medical care on their own, and veterans over age 65 or receiving VA pensions. Today, there are 168 hospitals in the VA system. Some have live-in units, allowing veterans to come and go as they please. The VA sometimes makes arrangements with nursing homes for patient care outside the hospital. And VA outpatient clinics provide a full range of services from general medical treatment to dental care or to drug clinics.
She was tall, ice blonde, and wearing a hands-off sign hung on her by the great Earl Janeth. If I'd been smart, I'd have given her a wide berth. But then if I'd been smart, I'd be the head of an international publications conglomerate, and Earl Janeth would be working for me. And I'm not so smart. I returned her cool nod, and I filed away for future reference the invitation in her eyes. And it all led to murder, with me caught in a web, trapped, running for my life. I first saw Pauline Dulles at one of those parties Earl Janeth liked to give in his minor palace in the East 60s to impress investors and moguls and to keep reminding his staff how lowly they really were. My wife was at my elbow, dazzling a group with quick conversational footwork.
Sorry we're so late. We couldn't get away from President McKinley. You know, our 24th president at the bar of the Silver Lining. Well, that is tonight he was McKinley. Sometimes he is Justice Holmes, Thomas Edison. He has an earthly alias, but I've forgotten it. When he's very drunk, he's Abe Lincoln and he frees the slaves.
She's some lady, my wife. You'd think with a magnet like that, a man would stay put. But there was another, more powerful force in that room. I tried not to look at Pauline Dulles, but I could sense everywhere she was. 100 or more people drifted in and out. Old wine and new bottles. Old conversation and changing faces. When it was time to make the last train home, Earl Janeth emerged from somewhere, and Georgette and I said our goodbyes.
Well, glad you could come, Stroud. I'm delighted to see you, Mrs. Stroud. You should always wear polka dots.
I'll go home and put spots on everything, like a Dalmatian.
No. More like a pinto pony.
Watch out for your boss, George. He's turning my head again.
My pleasure, believe me, dear lady, my pleasure. Well, good night.
Good night.
Oh, Too bad you were late, Stroud. You missed Major Conklin. He likes what we've been doing recently with crime waves, and I told him that you're the moving force there. He was quite complimentary.
Sorry to have missed him.
Oh, that string of graveyard magazines he just absorbed, he wants to liquidate them, but I explained to him I didn't think a man of your precision mentality could advise him. He needs a geomancer.
It's been a pleasant evening, Mr. Janet.
Well, it has. Good night.
Like a whip, Janet turned and left. We were dismissed. Well, let's grab this cab. Grand Central.
Well, did you think so, George? I had fun. You don't really like working for Janet, do you? I don't believe in forcing square pegs into round holes. Neither do you. Cost is too high. I mean, well, sometimes it seems to me we were much happier when we had the Roadhouse, weren't we? For that matter, it was fun when you were a racetrack detective. Even the all-night broadcasting job. It was crazy, but I liked it.
I'm executive editor for Crime Waves magazine, and we're halfway to a down payment on that piece of land you like. Your lipstick's all worn off.
Then you might as well kiss me. George, what's a geomancer?
I don't know. Georgie Janet got it out of the fattest dictionary printed. He wrote it on his cuff, and now the rest of us know why he's a boss. Yeah, remind me to look the word up. I would look it up and drop it into my conversation sometime, but it wouldn't satisfy because he'd had it first, as he had everything. My wife's head on my shoulder, and still I couldn't get Pauline Dulles out of my mind. Was it only because I wanted to take something away from him? The question was put aside by the big clock. Time. Pressing. And you're the mouse, scurrying around and across the intricate wheels and balances. Cobweb mazes, false exits, dangerous blind alleys and steep runways, natural traps and artificial baits. Honey for the true opening. A real prize. And the clock strikes and it's too late, and you're a prisoner again. Locked up 9 to 5. And now I am looking in the mirror at a half-shaved face, practicing what I'd like to say to Earl Janet. Look here, Janet, we really got to do something about getting me more money.
Well, I thought, George, that you went over this whole thing with Steve Hagen months ago.
He said to talk to you, you said to talk to him.
Yes, you and Steve settled it, right?
How'd you like it if I took something away from you, huh? Something priceless, something exquisite, something you bought and paid for.
George! Honey, come down. Your waffle's getting cold.
Janet Enterprises. 29 floors of publication, syndication, circulation. Stop by any corner newsstand for the full smorgasbord. Weekly, monthly, quarterly. We put them all out. Newsways magazine, Commerce, Sportland, Plastic Tomorrow, Personalities, The Sexes, Future Ways. 26th floor, Crime Ways. That's me. In theory, we're the nation's police blotter. In practice, we're one of the biggest circulations of Janet's empire because everybody's fascinated with crime. Which is what my associate editor, Roy Cordette, and staff were discussing when I got in that morning.
Dozens of people are murdered every day.
But it's a criminal.
Morning, George.
Good morning, Roy. Leon.
Morning.
Morning, Ed.
George, we were talking about the mass murder outside Reading. I tell him we ought to run that story. It'll sell 6 million copies.
Yes, Leon, but is it for Crime Wave?
Yes.
Hours piled on top of each other while we juggled stories of murder, rape, robbery, analyzing what sells, what doesn't, sociological research, parole board reports, decisions of the Supreme Court, interspersed with fights with our budget department and a temperamental photographer. It's 6:15 when I escaped my desk after the inevitable phone call home that I'd be late for dinner. The babysitter informed me that my wife had gone to her sister's in Trenton on some emergency and might not be home till morning. So there I was. At about 6:30, I walked into the Silver Lining, sat at the bar alone, studying my face in the mirror, replaying my imaginary conversation with Janet about a raise. He still said no. I told him where he could go, and I had another double shot.
How much, Red, darling? You coming?
No, not yet.
Well, it's lovely seeing you. Enjoyed the drink. Bye.
I didn't have to turn. The mirror gave me the picture. Two expensive, chic women, one brunette, one blonde. The brunette gathered up packages from Saks and Von Witz and left to brighten someone's evening. The blonde stayed. She smiled at me. Pauline Dulles.
Hello.
Oh, hello there.
Join me?
Why not?
You remember me, don't you?
Vividly.
I remember you. You're a friend of President McKinley, and this is where you met him, right? Is he here tonight?
Well, his real name's Clyde something. No, he's not here tonight in any of his disguises.
Oh, that's too bad. I was looking forward to it.
Well, you don't want to go out with McKinley. He was assassinated. Safer going out with me.
I wasn't worrying about being safe.
You've come to the right place. We had 3 margaritas. Was it 4? We pushed our Mexican food around our plates. She made a phone call to clear her calendar. I finished a drink I seemed to have in my hand, and I, too, made a phone call to the understanding manager of the Lexington Plaza, who just happened to have an unobtrusive room for us. We walked to the hotel. I knew I should turn back, but I couldn't. I'd stepped off the deep end.
The accusation is entirely false. I've been treated unfairly. My reputation in the community has been hurt, and my husband and children are very upset. I don't appreciate being arrested and being accused of driving under the influence of drugs. It makes me sound like some sort of hippie. Oh, that's terrible. The fact is that I've been having these tension headaches, and the doctor prescribed something for them. He said that I shouldn't drive when I take the pills, but I was just going to the supermarket, and I hit another car. Accidents happen. You don't have to be a drug addict to make a misjudgment. I'm sorry if the people in the other car were hurt, but I was hurt, too. To take a pill for a headache and be arrested for driving while under the influence of drugs? I just don't do things like that. I'm a respectable woman.
This message was brought to you by the General Motors Corporation.
We'll return to our story in a moment.
You're 17, 18. You've graduated from high school. You want to make something of yourself. But you don't have that something to make it with, like money for 4 years of college. What do? Well, you don't need 4 years of college to get a good job. Today, there's a crying need for technicians in exciting fields like oceanography, electronic data processing, health service, environmental control, forestry, and many others. Technicians earn twice the salary of the average high school graduate. Some even make more than 4-year college graduates. All you need is a year or 2 of technical training. To learn how you can become a technician, send for our free booklet. It's called 25 Technical Careers. Write Careers, Washington, D.C., 20202. If you can't afford 4 years of college, write Careers, Washington, D.C., 20202, and make something of yourself.
The buzzing and hammering were in my head. The ringing was harder to figure out. It was an arm's length away. A telephone. My brain finally sorted out the message. Hello?
I'm sorry, sir, but you don't have a reservation for today.
My eye is focusing now, but barely. Showed me an impersonal hotel room, 2 glasses, an empty scotch bottle, my clothes, and me.
There's another party checking in. The hotel is filled, otherwise we wouldn't disturb you, sir.
Her perfume was there, but she was gone.
Checkout time is noon.
Now, what time's it now?
1:30.
In the p.m.? I developed skill at lying those next weeks, and I stayed in town more and more. There was a sense of adventure, finding different temporary abodes. Once we spent a weekend as far away as Albany when my wife and daughter were away and Janet was in Washington. Got to be a game, thinking up different names for the register.
I'm sorry, sir, your handwriting. How do you pronounce it?
Phelps-Guillaume, Mr. and Mrs. Andrew Phelps-Guillaume.
Yes, sir. I hope you enjoy your stay in Albany.
The Phelps-Guillaume enjoyed every moment of it.
George Stroud. George.
Mrs. Phelps-Guillaume, you are the last, final, beautiful, ultimate enigma.
And I thought it was your art collection that you cared about.
No, collection. I do have quite a few Pattersons.
I never heard of him.
Her Louise Patterson. Yeah, but you are ignorant. Ignorant and beautiful and threatening and destructive.
You're a dangerous man, George Stroud.
Me? Kittens get belligerent when they see me coming. They sharpen their claws.
It is dangerous to know you.
Quit thinking about Janeth. There's nothing to be afraid of. He doesn't own you. He doesn't own me. Now drop Janeth. Those moments came up and passed, like the night and the morning and the long drive back to the city. And the constant, insistent pull of the big clock saying the interlude's over. I couldn't let her go. Not quite yet. We walked, reluctant for our time together to end, window shopping antique stores. Some still open, hoping for a last-minute sale of a night crawler. It was in the window of a cluttered corner shop that I saw the painting. Just two hands, one receiving a coin from the other. Unframed, dust-covered, curled at the edges, but unmistakably a Patterson. I was inside. Pauline trailed as the shopkeeper lifted the musty canvas out of the window and handed it to a big, sloppily dressed monolith of a woman with a voice that could cut steel and a face to match.
Ha! It's in rotten condition. Not worth much. What do you want for it?
I don't know. Make me an offer. 15, 20?
20? There's not a quarter's worth of paint on this crummy thing. I'll give you 5. Take it and be grateful. 5.
$50.
Hey, I'm buying this picture. Get your hands off it. Who do you think you are just because you got money? Lousy painting, nothing but a couple of hands. Not worth 50.
I've made my bid, 50. Can you match it? It was obvious she didn't have the money, and I couldn't have cared less. The shopkeeper was licking his lips for the 50. The last Patterson I bought cost me $900, and it was considered a bargain. I paid him in cash. Pauline thought I was crazy. At the cocktail lounge of the Van Barth, we stopped for a nightcap, and we argued about the value of the painting. Even in the dim, candlelit saloon, I could tell my 50 was a good investment.
The hands of Judas. No, the temptation of Judas. That's what we'll call it.
But Judas got 30 coins.
Just the same. It's Judas. 30 coins or 1.
Oh, okay. The temptation of Judas. Shall we drink to that?
Oh, I'm sorry, George.
The dedication was delayed. Pauline's drink was all over the table. I rescued her with my handkerchief, then I called the waiter to clean up. We moved to the bar, we drank to the temptation of Judas, and we left. It was just past 10 when we came out of the Van Barth. I drove the few blocks to 58 East, Pauline's apartment. As usual, I parked well away from the entrance. And as always, when I brought her home, I felt uneasy at the risk we were running. I got out of the car. I handed her the small overnight bag she'd taken to Albany.
It was all beautiful, George. Beautiful.
She kissed me and hurried away. Beyond her retreating figure, I vaguely noticed a limousine pull in at the curb opposite the building's entrance. There was something familiar about the posture of the man who got out of it. He put his head back into the car to issue instructions to a chauffeur who drove away. Then he turned for a moment in my direction. In the light that fell on his face, I saw that it was Earl Janeth. He looked directly toward me and followed Pauline into the building. I didn't move. I stayed hard-pressed back into the shadows. My job, my future, my family, all up for grabs. If he had recognized me.
How many stations can you button down on your car radio right now? 5? Would you settle for 10? Order most any new Chevrolet, Pontiac, Buick, Oldsmobile, or Cadillac with a Delco AM/FM stereo system. And you can preset 5 AM and 5 FM stations. That's 10 stations you can button down instantly. 10 from Delco.
Delco Electronics is the sound of General Motors.
This guitar is part of my life. The way lots of beautiful things are. Like men. You see the way my mind works? Music and good-looking guys. But those men better smell good-looking, too. I like them best when they wear English leather. English leather's like a beautiful folk song to me, fresh and natural. So all my men wear English leather, or they wear nothing at all.
You'll find a large selection of English leather Christmas gift sets in fine stores everywhere.
The Zero Hour continues after this.
I was in South Korea with the Peace Corps. We were the first rural health program in Korea. What a lot of us did was to go around and check to see if there was a TB patient in the house. A lot of these people had never, ever had any kind of medical attention at all. I remember one case. She was in pain. She was in real pain, and a doctor examined her and became very concerned. And he told us later that had she not come in, she would have died. I was very, very proud, But you've probably heard this, and you'll hear it again and again from volunteers. The volunteer himself gets more out of it than he actually gives to the people he's supposed to be helping.
Volunteer for the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps is one part of action. Action is doing something.
There is something you can do. Get into action.
I heard him call out her name before the door to the building closed behind them.
Pauline!
Had he seen me, recognized me? Would she tell him about me?
Pauline!
Oh, Earl.
Now, look, you saw me. Why are you pretending you didn't see me?
Earl, dear, don't be cross. It's late.
All right, I'll ring the elevator. You don't have to do it for yourself.
The doorman's never around. I've learned to do these little things.
Yes, your overnight bag. Shouldn't he have brought it in if he were any kind of a gentleman?
Did you have a nice trip, Earl?
I didn't care about Washington. And you? Did you have a pleasant weekend?
It was marvelous. I went riding and swimming. I read a grand book, and I met some of the most interesting brand new people.
Was he one of them?
One of whom? Oh, you mean the brand new people? Yes.
What did you do together?
Darling, please, let me get inside and get my shoes off. Make yourself a drink.
Where did you go with him?
Tonight? Well, first we went to a terrible place on 3rd Avenue by the name of Gill's. You'd love it.
Yeah.
Kind of a combination archaeology foundation and saloon. It's really weird. After that, we walked up and down the street shopping for antiques.
Antiques?
Mm-hmm. Finally, we bought a painting. At least he did. In a shop about 3 blocks from here. It was an awful old thing. Looked like it had just come out of a dustbin. He practically kidnapped it from another customer. Some woman who bid for it, too. Nothing but a couple of hands by an artist named Patterson.
A couple of what?
Hands, darling, just hands. A picture about Judas. After that, we went to the Van Barth and had a few drinks, and he brought me home. That's where you came in. Satisfied?
Oh, interesting itinerary. Seems it would take more like a weekend than an evening.
We moved fast.
Well, who is this fast-moving, brand-new person?
He's in advertising. Name's George Chester.
Oh?
Drink your brandy.
Oh, thank you. Well, at least this time it's a man.
Just what do you mean by that?
You know what I mean.
Are you bringing up that thing again, throwing Alice in my face? You never forget Alice, do you?
Do you?
Why, you damn mean imitation Napoleon. You're a fine one to talk. That's priceless.
Yes?
How about you and Steve Hagen?
What about me and Steve Hagen?
Every time I see you two together.
Steve and me?
As if you didn't know.
You say this about Steve? The finest man that ever lived. And me?
Are you so dumb you lived this long without even knowing it?
You have no right to say bad things about Steve.
Oh, put that down. Don't. Oh, no, please don't. No!
That's my man. Like Steve. And you. Pauline! Pauline, get up. Oh, God. Oh, my God. My God.
She was killed at 10:30 Saturday night. I didn't hear about her murder until I read Monday morning's newspaper. For her, it was over. For me, it was just beginning. I didn't know what hell was about. but I was to find out.
You are listening to Mutual's presentation of The Zero Hour.
The best pollution-fighting machine in America is right at your fingertips. And that means pointing out pollution whenever and wherever you see it. Like that smokestack you pass every morning that's always spewing smoke into the air. Don't close your eyes to it. Take a stand. Point it out to someone who can do something about it. It'll make you feel a little better and America look a little cleaner. People start pollution. People can stop it. This message brought to you on behalf of Keep America Beautiful and the Advertising Council.
Even if someone served them a slice of beef, they couldn't bite into it. Their teeth are too weak. I'm not talking about some people off in Africa or Asia. I'm talking about Americans. American children. It's tragic how many thousands of them are in this country whose teeth will literally rot in their mouths because they'll never receive basic dental care. They may not even own a toothbrush. What hurts is that it takes so very little for any one of us to help them. The same dollar, for instance, that buys you 2 packs of cigarettes can buy 3 American children the first toothbrushes they've ever owned. I'm Cliff Robertson. Won't you give up some cigarettes so some American children can have their first toothbrush? Send your dollar to Americans for Children's Relief, Box 5050, Stamford, Connecticut. Box 5050, Stamford, Connecticut. $1. And, of course, if you can afford more, give more. Tomorrow at this time, rest your eyes and listen here to this week's continuing study in suspense, Desperate Witness. I'm Rod Serling.
Been listening to The Zero Hour, a presentation of the Mutual Broadcasting System in association with Hollywood Radio Theater, heard every weekday at this time. Rod Serling is your host. Zero Hour is produced and directed by Elliott Lewis. The Hollywood Radio Theater theme was played by Ferranti and Teicher and is now available on United Artists Records and Tapes. Hugh Douglas speaking. Tune in tomorrow, and once again,
rest your eyes and listen here
to The Zero Hour.
The Zero Hour brought to you in part by General Motors, Delco, and MEM. This has been The Zero Hour on Mutual Radio.
I'm Rod Serling. You're listening to The Zero Hour. Rest your eyes. Exercise your imagination. This week, Kenneth Fearing's study of a deadly obsession. Desperate Witness. Starring Richard Crenna. Keenan Wynn. And Julie Adams. In Elliott Lewis's production of The Zero Hour.
The Mutual Broadcasting System presents The Zero Hour. Sponsored in part by
General Motors and Contact. This is The Zero Hour on Mutual Radio.
George Stroud, husband, father, executive editor of Crime Ways magazine, a restless man, never quite satisfied with what he has. Earl Jonoff, arrogant, pedantic publishing mogul, Stroud's boss. Pauline Delos, ice blonde, cool, the boss's mistress. George Stroud, Earl Jonoff, Pauline Delos. Three sides to the eternal triangle that meet but for one moment. The formula is timeless. The connection is murder. And for George Stroud, like the taut mainspring of a clock overwound, life itself is about to explode on the hour. Our story, Desperate Witness, continues after this word.
A message from the Council for Financial Aid to Education and this station. College students now march to a different drummer, and sometimes it seems to no drummer at all. But what matters most is that colleges continue educating. Students and their parents pay tuitions to make this possible, but the money they pay just doesn't go far enough. 2/3 of college costs must come from other sources, including contributions from friends of colleges. How can you be the friend of a college? You can believe that educating young people is the main thing, not whether they're singing football songs or folk songs. You can be willing to back up your belief with a gift, because colleges need money to march ahead. A lot of that money must come from people like you. Give to the college of your choice, now.
I had intended going straight home, but after I saw Janet go into the apartment with Pauline, I felt the need to wander a while in limbo. Up to that point, I'd meticulously kept my wife and my family in one niche in my life, and Pauline sealed off from them in another. To go home irritated with the thought of Pauline and Janet being together was to somehow overlap the two, spoil the waters, so to speak. So I went back to Gill's, where I could have an anonymous drink and dull the churning within me that Janet had set off. The night was a couple of hours older when I drove into my garage on Marble Road and went into the paneled, comfortable suburban house with all its little scars of family living. The painting I bought, The Temptation of Judas, I simply laid down on the dining room table. It would have to be cleaned, repaired, and framed. I'd made a pot of coffee, and I thought about my wife and daughter who'd be returning tomorrow, Sunday. So help me, that's all that was on my mind when I fell asleep, not knowing that Pauline was dead, murdered. If I'd known what was happening back in the city in Steve Hagen's apartment, I wouldn't have closed my eyes.
Coming.
Earl, come in. What is it? What's wrong?
Close the door, will you please hurry?
What is it? Sit down. I'll get you a drink.
Steve, I just killed Pauline.
You should have killed her years ago.
Well, I do. I go to prison, Steve.
Stop it. Who saw you come here?
Huh?
Here. Anyone see you?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I hit her over the head with something. A decanter, I think. Maybe 3, maybe 10 times.
Fingerprints?
Oh, I wiped them off and off the doorknob. And the doorman wasn't on duty when I went in or when I came out. I killed her. I didn't intend to. It's just, well, it's the pressure. I didn't get anywhere in Washington. Jonathan Enterprises is in real trouble. What am I going to do, Steve? The SEC's after me. Jenna Donahue's trying to force me to merge and sell.
Forget all about that for now. You sure nobody saw you go into her apartment?
Who's that?
Steve Hagen here.
Oh, Mr. Hagen, I hate to bother you at home. This is Emery Mafferson.
Well, what can I do for you, Emery?
Well, I just heard a disquieting rumor that the magazine's going to fold.
Mr. Janeth's right here. We've been in conference over the same stupid rumor. Hold a minute. I'll let you talk to him. Go on, Earl. Talk.
But who is it? Who is he?
He works for us, Futureways. Tell him the rumor he heard is false. Everything's okay. His name's Mafferson. Emery.
Hello, Emery.
Oh, hello, Mr. Janet?
Look, a lot of false rumors floating around. All that talk. I don't want you to believe a thing.
Oh, great. I feel relieved, Mr. Janet.
Well, it's good to talk to you, Henry. Anytime, and keep up the good work. What was that all about?
You just established your alibi. When the police investigate you, as they will when your relationship with Dulles comes out, we have the testimony of Mafferson that he talked to you in my apartment at... What time did you kill her?
Oh, I don't know. 10:30?
10 minutes of 11. And they'll have your chauffeur's testimony. He dropped you here right from the airport at 10. And mine that we've been in conference ever since. And since no one can identify you as having been in the building...
There was someone. Someone did see me.
Saw you go in?
Yes, a stranger. He was just leaving Pauline. They'd been away together. For the evening. Maybe for the weekend. That's why we quarreled. That's what started the whole thing.
Did he recognize
Well, I don't know.
Did you recognize him?
No, he was in the shadows. I couldn't tell much. But she said his name was George Chester.
One man in the world saw you go into her building and you don't know who he was? Whether he knew you or recognized you?
Well, I don't know.
We've got to find him before the police.
How can we do that?
What do we employ 2,000 people for?
Well, if we find this man, then what?
It all depends. When the story breaks, he may go straight to the police. In that case, our alibi stands, and our line is this. He says he saw you on the scene. Well, what was he doing there? That makes him as hot as you are. We'll make him even warmer.
Of course. You mean only to scare him off?
If he doesn't scare, the case goes to trial. You've got an alibi.
But if he doesn't go to the police the minute this breaks, then what?
He's a constant threat to your safety, your position in life, your place in the world. Can you put up with an intolerable situation like that?
I don't like it. There's already been one tragedy. I don't want another. Not if I know what you mean.
You know what I mean.
No, I won't see a man killed in cold blood. I won't take any part of it.
Let me ask you, Earl, are you ready to retire to a penitentiary and write your memoirs? Or are you ready to take your full responsibilities along with the rewards? No, we never went to murder before. But we will this time, if we have to.
I killed her. I can't get that out of my mind. I killed Pauline.
When you break, a lot of other people break too. Whenever an entity like Janeth Enterprises goes under, and that's what this could trigger, a lot of innocent people, their plans, homes, dreams, aspirations, the future of their children, all of that can go to pieces with it. Myself, for instance.
I understand, Steve. All right, what has to be, has to be.
Now, let's get to work. Finish your drink, and we'll start from the top again. I want every step, every word. You got out of your car. You sent your chauffeur on. You went into the apartment with her.
I knew none of this when it was happening. I awoke in the morning and went to the train to pick up my wife and child. I hadn't even dreamed in the night. And my world was coming apart.
It was summer in the evening after the rain. We were driving, she and I. The road was winding as rivers wind. We were speeding like birds, like incredible birds, feeling the wind, speeding into the wind. It was summer in the evening after the rain. We were passing clouds, faster than the moon, driving, uncaring, she and I, faster and faster. Our car was like a comet. We were speeding through our lives. There was no way to stop. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
This message was brought to you by the General Motors Corporation. We'll return to our story in a moment.
Harriet Seco is 71 years old and reaping the benefits of what she sows.
I sew for Children's Hospital, make babies' clothes for the babies in the hospital. We make nightgowns, we make little jackets, we make pants. I like to sew, so I love it.
Alan Gordon is 82 years old. He's useful, needed, and appreciated.
I'm outlining a monthly
news bulletin. I wanted to do some work for people of my age or older or younger.
You have the opportunity to share the experience of a lifetime, yours, as a volunteer in a school, hospital, museum, wherever your talents and the needs of your community can best be served. Join RSVP, the Retired Senior Volunteer Program. RSVP is one part of action. Action is doing something.
There is something you can do. Get into action.
Monday morning, and Georgette came back to the breakfast table from taking our daughter to the bus.
George, have you seen the paper? There's a dreadful story about a woman we met, I think, at Janet's.
Sitting there in the sunny breakfast room, fresh-picked yellow roses on the table, I read it. Not understanding it, not believing it. I had to read the headline twice. But the picture was of Pauline. Her body had been discovered at about noon on Sunday. Her death had been fixed at around 10:30 the night before. Saturday. I just left her minutes before.
Isn't that the same woman?
Yes it is.
She was beaten to death with a heavy decanter.
I'm reading. I was grateful to have the paper to hide behind. My hands were shaking as I read the words. No arrests had been made, the paper said. Her immediate friends were being questioned, Earl Janeth among them. But the publisher had not seen her for several days. He'd just returned that night from Washington and had gone straight from the airport to a business associate's where he spent the evening in discussion. The business associate was not named.
George? Something the matter?
What? Oh, no, darling, nothing.
Well, don't look so grim. By the way, I didn't tell you I like that new painting you brought home, the one of the two hands, but it's in terrible condition. Another Patterson, isn't it?
Perhaps.
George, you don't have to be so monosyllabic. Can't you say anything but yes, no, perhaps? Where'd you get it?
Just picked it up. Honey, I'm trying to read the paper. Pauline and Earl Janeth went into that building at 10 o'clock on Saturday night. Now he claimed he hadn't seen her for days. He had to have been the one who killed her. Had he recognized me? If he had seen me that night, it would all come out. The weeks with Pauline, the lying, the whole sordid story, my life, my career, my marriage, family, all threatened. He killed her. He had to have been the one. How strong was his alibi? Could he make it stick? And if he did, where did that put me? On the train going into town, I read every newspaper, virtually memorizing what was known of the murder, but gathering no real information. It was warm in the city. Unseasonably warm. But I was cold. My hands, I noted, were white, my fingertips bloodless. In the mirrored elevator, I found myself staring at the strange face that was my own. Not a face, really, but a caricature. Lines like deep cuts that hadn't been there yesterday. Pallor. Mouth slightly open. Breathing shallow. All unmistakable signs of fear of a man in a desperate panic. I had 26 floors to gain control. When I stepped out of the elevator, I was wearing the mask, the facade of the confident, secure executive. Morning, Lucille. Any calls for me?
Steve Hagen's called twice. Better get right up there.
Oh, why? What's up?
I don't know, but you know Hagen.
Nobody knew Hagen. He was a hard little man whose soul had been hit by lightning. His mother was a bank vault, his father a computer. Steve Hagen was almost as loyal to Janeth as to himself. From what I knew of their backgrounds, Hagen was the kingmaker, Janeth the publications genius. But Hagen was the steel foundation that held things together. Everything about Hagen's office was designed to throw you on the left foot. I hadn't been privileged to enter his sanctorum often, but every time the same thing happened. Had loss of confidence. You opened the door and you saw him across an acre of office, A small man sitting at a huge raised desk. He didn't look up, which was part of his style. I started across to him, trying to remember exactly where the drop was. You couldn't see it from the door. The carpet was patterned and disguised it, but there was a step down, and always it came as a jolt. You started across in confidence and suddenly, abruptly, found yourself walking out into space and grabbing at the air. And you spent the rest of the distance trying to regain your equilibrium and your poise. You lost on both counts.
Morning, Stroud.
Oh, good morning. Morning, Steve.
Stroud, anything on your agenda at the moment you're to drop?
Oh, everything?
Your staff can handle things. I have something more important for you.
Mm-hmm. If you say so. Oh, by the way, I've just read about that Pauline Delos murder. It's pretty awful. You any idea?
Yes, it's bad. No, we have no idea about it.
Well, I suppose Janeth is, well...
He is, yes, but I don't know any more about it than you do. Now, I have some prepared notes here, so let's get to work, huh? We have a job on our hands. Not hard, but delicate. It seems you're about the best man on the staff to direct it.
Yes?
In essence, the job is this. We want you to locate somebody unknown to us. Really, it's a missing persons job. Would that be all right with you?
Well, missing persons seems to fit in with the essence of Crime Ways, and that's my job, Crime Ways.
Of course, of course.
Who is it that you want me to locate?
We don't know.
Oh?
Let me see now. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? The person we want went into some 3rd Avenue bar and grill called Gill's last Saturday afternoon. It's a weird kind of bar, more a museum.
He wasn't looking at me. He was studying his notes, or he'd have seen the sweat that popped out on my face. I could feel the trap being sprung for me.
To a friend, give your heart to your love, but give your cold affection to contact.
Don't just stand around and sniffle. Do something about that cold, early. To get the relief you want, up to 12 hours of continuous relief from just your sneezing, runny nose, and congestion, you'll need 6 cold tablets, 2 every 4 hours, or 3 ounces of nighttime liquid, 1 every 4 hours, or only 1 contact. Figure it out. 6 or 3 or 1. Take contact. Get all day, then all night relief.
Give your cold to contact.
6 or 3 or 1. When you catch a cold, take contact. Only as directed. Contact, number 1 in the world.
The Zero Hour continues after this.
Read any good books lately? Well, ladies, if you're trying to find the official government studies on the cost of pollution versus the cost of cleaning up the environment, you'll have to do some looking. You and I know what pollution is doing to us. Disintegrating hose, damaging our health, making the wash gray, the coffee blah. So what's the cost of making it go away? Some people have said it's too high. Oh, come on now. I say we can actually save money by cleaning up pollution. And I must be on the right track because the National Wildlife Federation says it too in their new report on pollution. As a matter of fact, they come right out and say that every family can save $200 a year by pushing for a reasonable national pollution cleanup now. This has been another feature report on the cost of pollution. For more information on what pollution's costing you, write Department 9B, National Wildlife Federation, Washington, D.C., 20036.
I fought a rising nausea. My cheek muscles formed a slight smile that froze into place and gave me, I hoped, a look of complete concentration. But my mind was racing at light years speed as he reeled off my actions on the day of the murder.
This man we're looking for, Stroud, was accompanied by a rather striking blonde, also unidentified. They later went to a 3rd Avenue antique shop. In fact, they browsed through several, but in one, he bought a painting from a dealer, overbidding another customer, a woman who also wanted to buy it. The picture was by an artist named Patterson. According to our morgue,
he, or somebody, had done a quick and thorough research job on Patterson. He had all the details, how 10, 12 years back she'd been hailed as a meteor in the art world, that she'd never fulfilled her promise. In recent years was totally unheard of, although her work maintained value. He had all the details of my transaction. He knew the painting depicted two hands, was in rather bad condition, and that I bought it for $50.
After they bought the painting, the man and the woman with him went to a cocktail lounge in Van Barth for a few drinks. It's possible he checked the picture there. He may have had it right with him.
Why do you want this man, Steve?
We think our party is a vital figure in a business and political conspiracy that's reached colossal proportions.
You mean threatening Janeth Enterprises?
Exactly. What this man represents could destroy Earl Janeth. And we can't let that happen, can we?
So, what do we do?
Well, we just have to find this man. We can't have him loose, threatening all our existences, can we? Oh, as we understand it, his name is George Chester.
I understood it all now. Pauline had given Janeth the full rundown of our Saturday night activities. And had she told him where we spent the night Friday, they'd probably had a violent fight about it, and he'd killed her and gone straight to Hagen. Then Steve Hagen was the business associate the newspapers mentioned who provided Janeth's alibi. It was plain Janeth knew he'd been seen and was afraid he'd been recognized. The ground I was on felt landmined. One step the wrong way. It's all pretty vague, Hagen. Can't you give me more to go on?
You're right, Stroud. It is vague. Our information is based entirely on rumors and tips and certain, well, striking coincidences. When we locate our man, then we'll have something definite for the first time.
Well, what's it to be? A story for Crime Waves?
No, I don't think so. I don't know right now just what our angle will be when we have it. We might want to give it a big play in one of our books eventually. A good story should never be wasted, right? Or we might decide to use it in some entirely different way. It's all up in the air.
Well, tell me, who else is in on this? Should we cooperate with anyone? The cops, for instance?
No, of course not. Absolutely not. This is our story, exclusively. It must stay that way. You'll have to go to other agencies for information, naturally, but you get it. You don't give it. Is that perfectly clear?
Yes, I understand.
Now, do you think you can knock together a staff as large as you want and locate this person?
It would be easier if I knew more about this mystery guy, what he looks like. Somebody must have described him.
Well, not too well, but we do know he's of average build and height. Weight 150 to 180, under 6 feet. It's possible he's in advertising. But your best bet is this place called Gill's, or the shop where he bought the picture, or the bar of the Van Barth. Oh, and that picture he bought. Perhaps the artist. I have a feeling that picture alone might give us a break.
Not impossible.
We want this guy in a hurry. Can you do it?
You say his name's Chester, George Chester?
It might be, might not.
Oh, that's a start.
Then you go to work immediately?
All right, Steve. I'll take the assignment. I have absolute carte blanche?
Absolute. Expense, personnel, everything. In every way except time. We want him now.
He got up from the high-back throne and wandered to the huge plate glass windows that looked out over about 10 million people. I hadn't suspected this cold, dried man would have had such a sense of drama. He took a long pause and he swept his hand out, indicating the city far beneath us.
Our man is out there somewhere, Stroud. May even be very close for all we know. It's a simple job for a mind like yours. Get him.
I looked out the window myself. Get him, he said. Find him. I had found him. The man I sought was looking back at me. My own reflection in the plate glass. I'd been assigned to set myself up to be murdered.
You are listening to Mutual's presentation of The Zero Hour.
Your American Cancer Society presents Peter Falk and Lee Grant as patient and nurse.
Nurse, I'm Fenton Finglinger. I have an appointment for a checkup with Dr. Worley. You're Nurse Skank?
Yes.
Remember me when I was here after getting hit in the mouth with a hockey puck?
Oh, sure. 6 stitches, I recall.
Right. It wasn't too clever of me to play hockey at my age anyway.
Oh, you don't look very
Oh,
old.
thanks a lot. I feel young and everything, but I figured I bring my car in for regular checkups, so I should do the same for myself.
Oh, true. A regular checkup lets you know if you're really as well as you feel.
Like I had this car, and I kept noticing oil underneath. But I ignored it. I ended up burning out the transmission. It was only a loose oil drain plug.
It's the same with people. The annual checkup lets the doctor detect minor ailments before they become major.
I was just going to make that point. Has anybody ever told you look terrific?
Oh, well, my husband does a lot.
Oh, terrific.
Help your doctor help you with an annual checkup. Help your American Cancer Society with a generous check.
Tomorrow at this time, rest your eyes and listen here to this week's continuing study in suspense, Desperate Witness. I'm Rod Serling.
Today's episode brought to you in part by General Motors and Contact. This is the Zero Hour on Mutual Radio.
You have been listening to The Zero Hour, a presentation of the Mutual Broadcasting System in association with Hollywood Radio Theater. Heard every weekday at this time. Rod Serling is your host. Zero Hour is produced and directed by Elliott Lewis. The Hollywood Radio Theater theme was played by Ferranti and Teicher and is now available on United Artists Records and Tapes. Hugh Douglas speaking. Tune in tomorrow. And once again,
rest your eyes and listen here
to The Zero Hour.
This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
I'm Rod Serling. You're listening to The Zero Hour. Rest your eyes. Exercise your imagination. This week, Kenneth Fearing's study of a deadly obsession. Desperate Witness. Starring Richard Crenna. Keenan Wynn. And Julie Adams. In Elliott Lewis's production of The Zero Hour.
The Mutual Broadcasting System presents The Zero Hour. Sponsored in part by
General Motors, Delco Electronics, and Sign-Off. This is the Zero Hour on Mutual Radio.
There's a nursery rhyme that refers to the mouse that ran up the clock. That clock is marking time, and time stops for no man. George Stroud, executive editor of Crime Waves magazine, will now conduct a search for a man who saw someone enter an apartment building the night of a murder. A desperate witness he alone knows to be himself. Our story will continue in a moment.
Absolutely lovely dress. Oh, thank you. Really?
Good old Harry. What a host. When Harry throws a party, nobody goes thirsty. Here, let me freshen up that drink. Good old Harry is such a great host. How come Bill and Jean had such a terrible fight?
I want to go home right now. Oh, it's a great party. I don't care. Such a great... No, I want to go home right now. Now
How come Bob had a little trouble driving home? And how come everybody who felt so good last night feels so bad this morning? Maybe good old Harry is not such a great host after all. Maybe good old Harry is a pusher, a neighborhood pusher. Harry pushes alcohol. So if you serve alcohol, please, don't be a pusher. And if you're a guest, don't let good old Harry or anyone else push you into drinking more than you want.
A public service message from this station and the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism.
If I picked the right kind of staff, twisted the investigation where I could, jammed it where I had to, pushed hard where it was safe, it might be a long time before anybody connected me with George Chester. Hopefully before that I could turn suspicion where it belonged, to the real murderer, Janet. Roy Cordett got them all together for me. I'd rely on Roy the heaviest. His office was next to mine. Also, he had the most analytical mind, so I wanted to keep my eye on him. I was behind my desk, playing it cool, the secure executive, as they all trooped in.
Good morning,
Ed Olin, Don Klausmeyer, Leon Temple, Nat Sterling, and Roy.
I've briefed everybody, George, to drop whatever they're currently doing.
Fine. Thanks, Roy. You're all being asked to take on a rather strange job. Has to be done quickly and quietly. I know I can rely on you. We've been given a blank check as far as the resources of the organization are concerned. If we need help on your particular assignments, just ask. Raid any department you need. Something special, come to me or to Roy here, who's second in command.
What's it about?
We're looking for somebody, Leon.
Oh.
Right now, we'll call him X. We don't know much about him. His name may be George Chester. It's possible he's in advertising. That'll be your assignment, Nat. Combing ad agencies, clubs, PR offices, newspapers, etc., etc., etc. Leon, check all real estate registers, tax records, public utilities, phone books of cities within, say, 300-400 miles for George Chester.
Yeah.
Take all the people you need to help you.
I've got it.
Now, all we've got is a name, and we're not even sure of that. We haven't even got a good description of him. Just say he's of average height, say 5'9" to 11, average build, probably between 140 and 190.
That's not much to go on.
Well, he's apparently a regular of a place on 3rd Avenue called Gill's. He was supposedly there last Saturday afternoon with a woman that we know to be a good-looking blonde. That's all we know about her. Now, that'll be your job, Ed. Find this joint, whatever it is, and when you do, stay there until our Mr. X comes into it. Now, on the same evening, our subject went into an antique shop, also on 3rd Avenue. That'll be your gig, Don.
All you've told us about this man took place last Saturday. Wasn't that the night Pauline Dulles was killed? She's connected with Janet. He was in Washington. Is that what this is about?
No connection. Not as far as I know. It's purely a big-time business scandal that Hagen himself and a few others have been digging into. Now it's due to break.
Yeah, well, I just thought it's quite a coincidence.
No.
Do we make inquiries about the blonde woman who was with this guy?
Yeah, you'll all have to do that. But we're not looking for the woman or any other outside person. It's the man we want. Only the man. All right?
Yeah.
No more questions?
Sure.
I suppose you intellectual tramps get out of here and get to work.
Okay. Bye.
They were gone, except Roy. His was the sharpest, most analytical mind. My greatest hazard. I could feel the wheels in his head turning. I waited while he walked around the desk, then crossed to the wall, facing it, hands thrust into his pockets. He leaned against the wall, staring at the carpet.
George, this is a crazy affair. I can't help feeling Don hit the nail on the head.
How do you mean?
There's a curious connection there, the fact that all of this happened last Saturday.
I don't understand.
Well, I don't mean it has any connection with Pauline Dulles' murder. Of course it hasn't. That'd be a little too obvious, but I can't help thinking there's something. I don't know what. Something happened last week on Friday or Saturday, perhaps while Janet was in Washington, that would really explain why we're looking for this mysterious art-collecting stranger at this particular moment and in such a hurry. What do you think?
Sounds logical.
There's a rumor that Janet Enterprises is in real financial trouble. That's why he went to Washington. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, well, it's confidential. Don't ask me how I learned of it, but Janet could be fighting a buyout or a merger.
He was standing against the wall, and I was suddenly aware of the picture above his head as though it screamed at me. My whole staff out looking for a man who collected Pattersons? Well, the Patterson stared right back at me. It had hung on my wall so long I no longer saw it. I'd bought it at the Lewis Galleries 2 years back, a profile of two faces showing only the brow, eyes, nose, lips, chins, facing each other in confrontation. In style, unmistakably Patterson. The artist called it Study in Fury.
I keep thinking the man we're looking for could very well be tied to the Janet Donahue group.
Janet Donahue?
Yeah, off the record, they're the ones trying to break Janet Enterprises. You think I ought to, on the side, follow up on that?
Good idea. Good idea, Roy. Hell of a good hunch. Follow it up and stick with it. He was hooked for now on a false lead. I held my breath as he moved from the wall. He didn't glance at the Patterson painting. Closed the door and went back to his own office. When he was gone, I sat for a long time, feeling the aftershock and beads of perspiration all over me. That painting staring at me all the time I had given orders to find me. It was dangerous, but it would have to stay there. No one had noticed it, but if I moved it, its absence would cry out like a banshee. Now it would have to stay there on the wall, even though at any moment someone might make the connection. I'd always liked that painting. Now it was a threat. And that Patterson I'd taken home, my wife had seen it.
I love you, Daddy. He brought me to the circus once. I love my daddy more than everything. My daddy is sweet. My daddy is regular. My daddy is skinny.
Sometimes when I'm riding in the car with him, he goes so fast I'm sort of scared.
Slow down, Daddy. And you might skid and drive the car off the road. Why are you going so fast, Daddy? When Daddy drives, I worry because he has lots of crashes. A policeman can come right around the corner, and my dad might get arrested.
I'm scared.
Oh, if you're worried about him. I get scared because he goes so fast.
If you don't care about your own safety, remember that those who love you do. Please, slow down. This message was brought to you by the General Motors Corporation.
We'll return to our story in a moment.
Here's a tip from your Better Business Bureau. Spring and summer are the seasons when most people plan vacations and they go flying off all over the place. And of course, they bring back a peck of precious pictures. Many camera stores are beginning to paste notices to their counters warning people that airline security measures may ruin photographic film in checked baggage. Some anti-hijacking devices used to check baggage for possible concealed weapons utilize X-rays, which will fog your film whether or not it's been exposed. Therefore, one of the best ways to protect film while traveling is to place it in a strong, clear plastic bag and hand carry it. Even though the film may be clearly visible in the bag, make sure that the airline boarding personnel are aware of the film so that it isn't accidentally subjected to X-rays. This has been a consumer tip from your Better Business Bureau.
Once I got over the initial shock of having dispatched an army of leg men to track myself down, I began to feel more secure. I had one great advantage. I alone knew where each one of them was at all times. I could evaluate the bits and pieces they brought me, could divert their direction, keep them from comparing notes, and discredit anything that got too close for comfort. I'd be under the big clock from now on. It was a desperate race between the police, Janet, and myself. Would the police get to me before they got to Janet? Could I get to Janet before Hagen got to me? I sent Mafferson to cover the police. I couldn't send one of my own staff. They were too crime-wise. Mafferson was an intellectual on Future Way's staff. Send him to cover a murder story, he'd end up writing a philosophical piece about prison reform. He'd been on staff 10 years, probably hadn't spoken 100 consecutive words to anybody. Anything Mafferson dug up would be for my ears only. And that's what I wanted. He came into my office, his plump face, as usual, vague. His expression an eternal puzzlement.
They took me off my assignment, and I was doing a piece on molecular structure.
Emery, I'm involved in a special outside job. The whole staff's working on it. But at the same time, one of the most sensational murders of the year has occurred. Pauline Delos. You must have read the newspaper account.
Oh, I believe I glanced at it. Oh, isn't she, Jenna's lady friend?
Wasn't she? Right. Well, this special assignment's taking all our time around here, but we can't let crime waves be left at the post. We can't let a big story like the Delos murder get away from us.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't understand where I'd fit in.
Look, the usual policy would be to break it, give it a big play, 20 or 30 leg men. This time, since my guys are busy, we'll do the reverse. I want you to go in there quietly, alone.
You want me to cover it?
A totally different approach. Fresh. You'll bring it something new, sensitive, not the usual expose. I want you to keep this assignment to yourself because I still haven't sold it upstairs. You know what I mean?
Well, a crime story, that's so out of my experience.
Start at Center Street, Homicide Bureau. Pick up everything as and when it happens. Phone it in to me, and me only, everything. I want to be kept up to date on every phase of the Delos story.
Well, now, will this be all right with Hagen? You know, he put me on future waves.
Don't worry now, I'll fix it with Hagen. And I'll fix it with Janeth, too. That's the beauty of a monolithic organization. The right hand doesn't suspect what the left hand's doing. By the time Hagen found out about Mafferson, I'd either be in the clear, or it'd be too late for me anyway. I rode down to the garage, got into my car, and drove off, intending to go straight home and get rid of that painting I'd bought. But I turned down a side street, and I found myself heading toward Pauline's apartment. It was the first I'd been there since that night. All this energy spent trying to plot my own survival, and I hadn't really stopped to think about her. The image of that beautiful neck, broken, and perfect body, lifeless. I had to pull over to the curb, pull myself together, force my mind to look for a weakness, a flaw in Janet's alibi. There had to be one. I went back over Saturday night, every step. I'd just taken Pauline home. My car's parked around the corner. I let her off. Not going into the lobby, so far as anyone in the building knows, I don't exist. I'm a distance off. I see Janeth drive up. He gets out of his car. He catches up with Pauline. He goes in with her. And what did he do after that? He killed her. Then he had to get away. But he'd sent his chauffeur on. Now, how'd he get to Steve Hagen's? I drove the logical route from Pauline's to Hagen's. Saw two nearby cab stands. Janeth could have used one of them if he'd taken a taxi to Hagen's, unless he found a cruising cab. He certainly wouldn't have been so stupid as to pick one up at Pauline's door. The farthest cab stand was the likeliest. I'd begin there, and then I'd try the nearer. No, it was dangerous, because cabbies talk to cops. No, not yet. I'd have to be careful and wait. I got back to my office just as Roy called in the first report. Hello?
It's Roy, George. Listen, I'm at Gill's Tavern with Ed Orland. It's a nut house. You know, this guy's got a museum here that looks like...
So what'd you find out?
Well, the bartender, who's the chief lunatic around here, described our man as intelligent, eccentric.
You sound like you don't agree.
Eccentric, yes, but only a moron would come into a dump like this and spend hours talking to the guy who runs this menagerie.
Is that all?
Well, the physical description we have doesn't seem far wrong. But nothing to add to it except he's brown-haired, clean-cut.
Anything on the blonde?
Nothing.
It certainly isn't much, is it?
Well, wait. Our man is unquestionably a lush.
Oh?
4 or 5 years ago, he was in here every night. Had to be sent home in a cab. At that time, he was a newspaper man. Bartender never heard of him working in advertising. Before he was a newspaper man, he ran a tavern upstate somewhere with his wife. That's all we've got. So what should Ed do? Come back to the office?
No. Our man was in there 2 days ago. He might turn up any minute. No, have Ed work on the bartender. Psychoanalyze him for more details. Have a few drinks with him.
This kook's a human blotter, and he's got some screwy game.
Well, Ed can get drunk with him, but not too drunk. And tell him to try some of the other customers. What's the address and phone number there? I thought I'd pulled it off pretty well. That'd keep things on ice for a while. Eccentric, huh? Moron and lush. I never saw that when I looked in the mirror. I touched my shirt. It was soaked with nervous sweat.
If you're in the market for a new Chevrolet, Pontiac, Buick, Oldsmobile, or Cadillac, you can make it a real sensation in stereo sound when you order a Delco sound system factory installed. AM with stereo tape, AM-FM stereo, and AM-FM stereo with 8-track tape are just some of the systems available. Delco stereo. We think you deserve it on a GM car.
Delco Electronics is the sound of General Motors.
Sinus flares up. Sometimes your whole face aches. When you need occasional help, get Sign-Off tablets, the sinus medicine. Sign-Off works with a full dose of pure aspirin for sinus headache, plus a sinus drainer for congestion. That's how Sign-Off helps sinus pain while you drain. Remember, for best relief and safety, take Sign-Off only as directed. Sineoff. The sinus medicine in the bright red box.
The Zero Hour continues after this.
जी हाँ, ये खानदानी मंसूबा बंदी का मरकज है.
Mais oui, c'est le centre de planning familial.
Yes, this is the family planning center.
There are family planning centers in more than 100 countries today. The women who come to these centers can't afford to go to private doctors, but they want to plan their children, when they're going to have them, and how many they're going to have. The trouble is, there aren't enough centers. Just in the United States, there are nearly 5 million women who have no way of getting modern family planning help. And that's nothing compared with the world problem. Some countries don't have enough family planning centers. Some don't have any at all. This year, again, many women will have babies not because they want to, but because they have no choice. Sad for them. Sad for the world. With family planning help, these women, too, will have babies only when they choose. So that all the people of the world may have this freedom of choice, support Planned Parenthood.
I was getting home later and leaving earlier. My wife, concerned with being cook, nurse, and handholder, our daughter had tonsillitis, hadn't seemed to notice that the painting was no longer in the dining room. I hoped she'd forgotten it. I had it stashed in the downstairs closet behind all our raincoats.
George, you're not leaving without your breakfast.
Yeah, I have to, hon. I'll call you.
Darling, I don't like the way you look at all. They're working you too hard. Well, try to get home earlier, dear.
The worry about how close I was to losing my family if the truth came out rode into town with me. Roy wanted me in his office, which had taken on the look of command headquarters for World War III. A big blackboard covered half a wall. Cross-reference charts were propped up on desks, tables. I didn't see Leon Temple right away. He was behind a 6-foot chart.
What do you think of it?
You're doing a thorough job, Roy.
I've got our Mr. X charted 10 ways from Sunday, all cross-indexed. Reports have begun coming in. See, under background, he may or may not be in advertising. He used to be a newspaper man. Once operated an upstate tavern resort with his wife. Now, that's just a matter of checking every tavern license back as far as necessary.
Well, it's a start, Roy.
Start? More than that. Leon just worked up a report on the Van Barth. I was just going to put it up on the board. Read it to him, Leon.
Sure. It was established that the man in question, whom we know as George Chester, was in the Van Barth Lounge on Saturday night last, sometime between 9:30 and 10. He was carrying an unframed oil painting, which he did not check, and was overheard talking to his female companion about what the painting should be named. The woman with him was one Pauline Ellis.
Ellis? Are you sure of that?
No doubt about it, George.
Oh, sure.
Leon checked the waiter, bartender, checkroom girl, all three. Identified her from pictures published in the paper. Now, doesn't this alter the whole character of the assignment?
Do the police know Dulles was in there Saturday night?
Of course. Everybody in the place reported it once they saw the papers.
I'm asking Leon.
Oh, yes, they know.
And do the police know that we're looking for the man who was with her?
Well, I didn't give them any information. I followed your exact instructions.
So that's it. Just that they were there.
Oh, no. There's evidence. When they left the cocktail lounge of the Van Barth, our subject left something behind.
What? What did he leave?
Subject's handkerchief. I've got it here in the envelope. The lady spilled her drink.
I see that.
I wouldn't touch it, George. We may be able to raise a fingerprint.
From a handkerchief? Oh, I doubt that. Anyway, if they can, I imagine it already has plenty. The waiters, the cashiers, yours. One more set won't matter.
Well, even without fingerprints, it can probably be traced. There's a laundry mark on it.
Yeah, well, I'll send it to the lab, Roy. You go on with what you're doing. At least I'd publicly handled the handkerchief. Back in my office, I closed the door of my desk on it. Just as Don Klausmeyer came in.
I've got some interesting information, George.
Any luck with the painting?
Yeah, real luck. You know, I found the artist.
No?
She lives in a loft, paradise for rats and termites. Got 4 kids, never was married. The first of the women's livers.
That's all very interesting. What's it got to do with our man?
Just this. She's the customer who bid unsuccessfully for her own picture that night. A friend saw her canvas in the shop window and told her. She tried to buy it back, but she'd been broke for years and couldn't match our guy's bid. But she did give a detailed description of him. You know, the artist's eye and all that.
Let's have it.
Yeah, I got the old girl on tape, had it transcribed. Here, let me read it to you.
All right.
I quote Patterson. The bum that outbid me for my own paintings was a smug, self-satisfied creep just like 10 million other rubber-stamped sub-executives. Brown hair, line of gray at the temple, brown eyes, high cheekbones, symmetrical lean features, face looks like he'd scrubbed and shaved it 5 times a day. Has one of those $10 hairstylings just over the edge of the ear and curling at the nape of the neck. More establishment than hippie. He's 37, 38, weighs between 160 and 165, 5 feet 10 and a half. Gray tweed suit, wide red and black necktie striped with white, wears a wide gold wedding band. A good deal of an exhibitionist. Imagines he's Omar Sharif, and that's what he plays at being. The woman with him was beautiful, if you like lesbians in standard Park Avenue models. He knows pictures, especially the works of L. Patterson, which he doubtless collects, but only for their snob appeal. Otherwise, he's a totally obnoxious man, unquote. Oh, she didn't miss much, huh?
It may or may not be a good description. Her opinion, a little biased.
You know, George, when I was poking around that studio loft she lives in, looking at acres of her pictures, they all had kind of the same feel. And it reminded me of something I've seen somewhere else quite recently.
I was staring straight over his head at Louise Patterson's Study in Fury on the wall behind him.
The only trouble is, I can't remember what it is or where I saw it.
Well, it'll come back to you. Don't worry about it. I'll see you tomorrow. I took him by the arm and ushered him out so he wouldn't have a chance to turn and look at the painting on the wall. I thought of its mate, the temptation of Judas, in the downstairs closet at home behind our raincoats. It could be discovered and easily if they ever caught up with me. If anyone ever got that far, I was finished anyway. Janeth and Steve Hagen would take care of that.
You are listening to Mutual's presentation of The Zero Hour.
I'd like you to ask yourself a personal question. What do you feel when you meet a handicapped person? Pity? Admiration? Fear? Are you from the school that teaches a stiff upper lip, try harder, fight, don't let anything stand in your way, do it? Do what? Learn a skill? Go to school? Develop confidence, self-respect? Then get turned down by a landlord who doesn't believe you'll pay the rent? By an employer who never hired the handicapped before and who isn't going to risk it now? If we don't believe in the handicapped, then how are they going to believe in themselves? Unless we recognize that they're human beings with feelings, with skills, with a sense of responsibility, then we're adding a handicap that they can't overcome. Let's stop handicapping the handicapped. This public service message brought to you on behalf of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare and the Advertising Council.
It was last summer when I was 18. I was in love with a girl named Kathy. Kathy was 18, too. It was the happiest summer of my life. I had never been that happy before. I know I'll never be that happy again. It was warm and beautiful, and so we bought a few bottles of wine and drove into the country. We drank the wine and held each other, laughed. It must have been the stars and the wine and the warm wind. Nobody else was on the road. The top was down, and we were singing, and I didn't even see the tree until I hit it. Kathy died. I killed Kathy.
Stop driving drunk. Stop killing each other. Write to Drunk Driver, Department Y, Box 1969, Washington, D.C., for more information on drinking and driving. A public service message on behalf of the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Tomorrow at this time, rest your eyes and listen here to this week's continuing study in suspense, Desperate Witness. I'm Rod Serling.
Today's episode brought to you in part by General Motors, Delco Electronics, and Sign-Off. This is the Zero Hour on Mutual Radio.
You have been listening to The Zero Hour, a presentation of the Mutual Broadcasting System in association with Hollywood Radio Theater. Heard every weekday at this time. Rod Serling is your host. Zero Hour is produced and directed by Elliott Lewis. The Hollywood Radio Theater theme was played by Ferranti and Teicher and is now available on United Artists Records and Tapes. Hugh Douglas speaking. Tune in tomorrow, and once again,
rest your eyes and listen here
to The Zero Hour.
This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
I'm Rod Serling. You're listening to The Zero Hour. Rest your eyes. Exercise your imagination. This week, Kenneth Fearing's study of a deadly obsession. Desperate Witness. Starring Richard Kramer, Keenan Wynn, and Julie Adams. In Elliott Lewis's production of The Zero Hour.
The Mutual Broadcasting System presents The Zero Hour. Sponsored in part by
General Motors and Quaker State Motor Oil. This is The Zero Hour on Mutual Radio.
George Stroud, on orders from on high, is leading a manhunt for someone he knows to be a witness before the fact to murder. It's only a matter of time, and time cannot be bought. Not like the painting hanging in the office, or the one for which he paid $50 to a junk dealer the night of the murder. For George Stroud, time is running short. In a moment, part 4 of Desperate Witness, right after this word.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash, and I've been around this great country of ours enough to know how important it is to get as much education as you can while you're young. If you want to start college or vocational school, this may be your chance. The government wants to give you some money if you have financial need. Can you believe that? Well, it's true. Look into a new program called Basic Grants to see if you qualify. Hurry on over to the county agent, post office, or nearest school for more information and an application form. A basic grant won't give you all the money you need to make it through college or vocational training, but it'll help you get on the road. It could be the most important road you'll ever walk in your entire life. And if you don't feel like walking, just write your name and address on the back of a postcard and mail it to Basic Grants, Post Office Box 84, Washington, D.C., 20044. That's Basic Grants, Post Office Box 84, Washington, D.C., 20044.
I called Steve Hagen. I would have preferred to see his face when I told him our search led us to a dead woman. But his secretary had said he wasn't available. So I settled for just hearing his reaction.
Yes, George?
Steve, the woman with our man that night was Pauline Dulles. Steve, are you there?
You better come upstairs, George.
They were both there when I walked across those carpeted acres. Steve Hagen seated at his desk, Janice standing behind him. If I thought my face reflected tension, Janice was controlled hysteria. He nodded to me, then he turned and he looked out the window.
George, I've imparted your information to Mr. Janeth. He's naturally disturbed. But he agrees with me that there's absolutely no significance in the fact that Pauline Dulles was the man's companion that night. What we want, what we have to have, is the name and whereabouts of the man himself. That's all we're after.
I can't buy that there's no connection.
Well, you have our assurance, Mr. Janet's and mine. You see, we've had reason to believe that Pauline knew this go-between, so it's not unnatural that she would have been out with him. Perhaps we should have told you.
Well, perhaps you should have.
Listen, Pauline Dulles is a blind alley. Her murder is one story. This is different, unrelated. Now, let's look at some of these other leads a little more closely. We're still checking the list of upstate liquor licenses suspended or not renewed with the board, aren't we?
Yeah, that's a tall order. There are hundreds. The list is being fed straight to me. If I get anything, he'll know immediately.
You seen the story Newsways ran about this Patterson woman?
It's too early for results.
Our spread is going to put that woman on the map. Someone is certain to recognize that Judas painting from our description. Our evaluation of it is priceless, is sure to locate it. It's my hunch that that picture alone will nail our man to the wall.
Those bars, art galleries, and so on.
They're all being covered, Mr. John.
Exactly. And why hasn't our man shown by now? No one suddenly abandons his habitual routine of life, not without good reason. Why?
He may be the one who murdered Dulles. In that case, he's not making himself conspicuous. Though he knows he's in fast company, he knows the score, and he's gone to ground. Right where he is, so the same thing won't happen to him.
You mean he may believe himself to be in danger?
He knows somebody's playing for keeps. Why shouldn't he be worried? Maybe he saw the killer, can identify him. He's afraid to come forward, knowing he's in for the same.
He's keeping under cover, staying away from all the places he always went before. How many people in the organization, Stroud, know about this particular job?
What do you mean?
Right here, Janeth Enterprises. How many, I'd guess?
Well, with 53 people now working on this assignment, I'd say everyone knows about it. The entire 2,000. Why?
Nothing. For a second, I thought I had something. All right. I guess that reports on everything. It's still nothing.
You think I missed a bet somewhere?
Just bear down on it, that's all.
I shall. And now that we've decided the murder and our particular guy belong together, there are a lot more lines we can follow.
What lines?
Well, for one thing, Mr. Janeth, I'll have some men cover all cab stands in the neighborhood of Pauline Dulles' apartment.
Cab stands? Why?
On the night of her death, only a few minutes after it, in fact, somebody took a cab away from that vicinity and couldn't help being rather noticeable. The driver will remember.
I don't follow that.
It's quite simple. Our subject took Pauline to Gill's, then to a number of antique shops, then to the Van Barth. Why wouldn't he take her home? Of course he did. Our timing concurs with the police's. He took her home, then he had to leave. The first and most obvious line to follow is that he left in a taxi.
Perhaps he had his own car.
Perhaps he did.
He may have walked, taken a bus.
Right. Maybe he did none of these things. But it's my hunch we'll discover he did take a cab. We'll locate the driver, we'll find out where he drove him, and that'll close the whole assignment. The stricken look on Janeth's face that came and went screamed his guilt, reassured me that I was right. Janet had taken a cab that night, and it was my only hope of nailing him with the murder. Later that day, Janet went home under doctor's care. The word was he had a strep throat. My bet was that he had a chill brought on by seeing himself with a number on his chest. But I had a chill, too. Brought on by the sure knowledge that if they'd been out to get me before, they'd stop at nothing to cut me down now.
Hello. Now, let me tell you about myself. I used to be a chronic drunk driver. In the 10 years between my first arrest and having my license revoked, I racked up 19 major traffic violations. I caused 6 serious accidents, injured 3 people beside myself, and had my license suspended twice. I was still driving and drinking. And then, one night I was driving home after work, and I'd had a few, and I hit this kid on a bicycle. He died before they could get him any help. He was just 11, a little younger than my oldest boy. I'm living with that now. I was too drunk to see him then, but I can see him now. And I remember.
This message was brought to you by the General Motors Corporation.
We'll return to our story in a moment.
I'm Lucille Maness, an unsuccessful big businesswoman, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about my unsuccessful business. Well, I was the co-founder of this woman's book club, but we ran into a little trouble. We had all kinds of problems, so I called SCORE. That's the Service Corps of Retired Executives. They're retired executives who
volunteer to help small businesses. I went over and discovered Lucille was in deep trouble. I made several simple business suggestions. I also strongly recommended the club seek incorporation with a well-established women's magazine until its membership increased sufficiently.
Unfortunately, one of my associates really didn't like the idea of a man giving us advice, so she wrote herself a check with the remainder of what we had left in the treasury and took off. Well, Mr. Krause came back to help again.
A man who knows how to solve problems likes to keep solving them.
Volunteer for SCORE. SCORE is one part of action. Action is doing something.
There is something you can do. Get into action.
I took 3 good recent photographs of Earl Janeth out of the morgue. But I didn't leave the office, even when 5 o'clock rolled around. I stayed, pretending to be bogged down, correlating all the information that had been given to me. By the time I left the office, I really needed a drink. The idea of going into a bar now made me very nervous. I got to the second cab stand, which I figured would be the most likely, about the same hour that Janeth would have taken the cab that Saturday night. I showed Janeth's pictures to the only cabbie waiting at the stand. He didn't want to know who I was or why I was asking.
No. Wait, let me see that other picture. No, I'm sure I never hacked this guy, but maybe my partner. We own a cab together. He works Saturday nights. He could have drove him, you know.
I gave him 3 things. A picture of Janeth, a $20 bill, and the phone number of the office with instructions to talk only to me. The proposition was backed up by another 20 in the offing if he got me the right information. I felt more relaxed for the first time in days when I got home. My family was asleep. I had a drink, and I took the temptation of Judas painting out of the downstairs closet. My intent was to destroy it, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. It was a work of art, and to destroy a work of art is murder of another kind. So I carried it into the cellar, and I stashed it face to the wall behind the furnace. The horn of the school bus and a small female cyclone swept through the lower rooms of the house, gathering school bag, crayons, picture book, lunchbox, and a hastily scribbled note from her mother explaining her tonsillitis. Her mother and I stood there in the warm sunlight for a moment. The picture of an ordinary, normal, untroubled family. I waved the bus off until I could no longer see it, and I kept waving. I could feel my face locking into deep lines that could hold rainwater.
Are you all right, George?
No,
headache, that's all. Just a headache.
George, something is bothering you. I can feel
Will
it.
you get off my back? Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry. It's just it's a lousy mood. You know how it is. It's deadline week.
That's okay. You know, you forgot to bring home a Newsways last night.
Don't mind. I'll bring one home tonight without fail. In fashion, if you like.
Oh, never mind the Newsways. I bought one yesterday.
Oh?
You know there's an article in it about this Louise Patterson.
Yeah, I glanced at it.
Fabulous. Just what you've been saying for years. Here. Listen. With all the force of a major explosion, by grace of a new talent suddenly shooting meteor-like across the otherwise turgid skies of the contemporary art world.
Overwritten.
There's more. Louise Patterson may view her models through a microscope, but the brush she wields is gargantuan. Isn't that grand?
Grand.
Well, they're recognizing her talent. Don't be so critical just because they use different words than you would. At least they admit she's a great painter. Well, for heaven's sake, George, don't pretend you aren't pleased. You must have 7 or 8 Pattersons. Now they're all valuable.
I have to run. I'll drive in. Or do you need the car?
Wait. I want you to hear the rest of this. This week, interest in the art world centered on the whereabouts of one of Patterson's lost masterpieces, her famed Judas, admittedly the most highly prized canvas, etc., etc. This is the part. Depicting 2 huge hands expending a coin, a consummate study in flaming yellow, red, and tawny brown. This composition was widely known some years ago, then it quietly dropped from view, and so on. Well?
Neat, but not gaudy. They make it sound like a rainbow at midnight.
That's not what I'm driving at. Would you know anything about that picture?
Well, why should I?
Didn't I see an unframed painting you brought home over a week ago? The night Georgia came down with tonsillitis, didn't I?
Oh, that, yeah. Oh, well, honey, that wasn't an original. That was only a copy.
Well, what became of it? It was here in the dining room. I searched everywhere.
I took it to the office. Why do you think those plumbers who call themselves writers got such an accurate description of the original? Bye, sweetie. I'll have to step on it. Call you this afternoon. Mafferson met me coming into the building. We rode up together. Fortunately, the elevator was empty except for the 2 of us. But Mafferson didn't want to talk about what he'd learned at police headquarters. He had another worry. His job.
You think we'll all be fired?
Who gave you that idea?
Well, I ran into this fellow at breakfast. I always stop off at Schraff's in the morning. Fred Steichel's his name. Managing editor of Jeanette Donahue. I never did like that man, and he's even more obnoxious now that he's in a position of power. He was almost as insulting as the night when I tried to call you. A week ago Saturday, the night of the murder, as it turns out. I couldn't reach you, so I called Steve Hagen. Steichel says our magazines are going to fold.
Wait a minute. What time did you call, Steve?
10:30, 10:45. It's strange, isn't it? Police records say that's about the time she was killed.
And you talked to Steve Hagen? He was home?
Yes. At his apartment. Talked to Janet, too.
Janet?
Yeah. What's strange about that? He'd been there all evening, came direct from the airport. They were having a business meeting, and told me not to worry about my job.
I wanted to yell. Mafferson backing Janet's alibi. I had to find that cab driver. My mind was racing with a need. We were in my office, but I couldn't remember reaching it. Mafferson was dutifully giving me his police report, and I wasn't listening. Until I heard the word...
Albany.
What?
I said, the police know Dulles was out of town from last Friday until late Saturday. They found out where she was from a book of matches in her apartment. Came from a nightclub in Albany that doesn't circulate its matches. And in the course of a routine checkup with the Albany hotels, they found out where she'd stayed and what name she'd used.
Oh, really?
Incidentally, the police know all about this job you've been doing here, and they're convinced the man you're looking for and the man with Dulles last weekend in Albany is one and the same. Does that help or hinder our story?
Go on.
Oh, that's about all. They're sending a man up there this afternoon or tomorrow morning with a lot of photographs to check out with the nightclub, the hotel, and elsewhere. I told you they had the Dulles woman's address book, didn't I? They've been rounding up pictures of every man she knew, and most likely the Albany guy is one of them. Do you follow me?
Yeah, I follow you.
They know from the general description they got over the phone from the hotel personnel that the man most definitely was not Janeth. At the hotel, they were registered as Mr. and Mrs. Andrew Phelps Guillaume. Oh, by the way, your name was in her address book. Did you know that?
My wife and I met her at a couple of parties.
Now, if I may digress from these facts to a more philosophical evaluation...
You're doing a good job, Emery. Don't evaluate. Just keep compiling facts. Oh, by the way, is the department looking for a photograph of me?
Oh, they already have one. Off your driver's license application. The man they're sending upstate has quite a collection, 50 or 60 photographs.
I see.
Now, I can go to Albany with him if you like. You know, expedite things.
No. I want you to start working up that story. I could feel the big clock's hands spinning, hurling me faster and faster. Any minute now, it would tell me my time was up.
Judy, do you remember what I told you about all that high-speed turnpike driving you're doing now and all that power equipment on your new car?
Yes, Caleb?
About how they can make your engine so hot that the oil thins down so it may not protect your engine?
Yes, Caleb.
Now, how do you tell if your oil's too hot?
Just watch the temperature gauge.
Nope. That just shows how hot the radiator fluid is.
Oh, I know. When the oil's too hot, that little red light goes on.
Nope. That just tells you the oil pressure's too low.
Well, how do I tell if my oil's too hot?
Fact is, you can't.
Then how do I know my engine's protected?
Make sure you're using quality oil like Quaker State. Quaker State's specially made to stand up to high engine heat so it can keep right on protecting like an oil's supposed to.
Is that the reason you always recommend Quaker State?
That's one reason.
Quaker State your car to keep it running young.
The Zero Hour continues after this.
Josephine, open up! It's me, Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of all France, much of the civilized world, and Louisiana if the deal falls through.
Quick, Pierre, hide in the closet. Napoleon must not find you here. Come in now, Pete.
Ah, Josephine, I had to see you.
Napoleon, my dearest heart, what are you doing here? I thought you were at Waterloo.
I was, but it ended early. What is that? I smell cigarette smoke. You know I hate you to smoke.
I didn't. I don't. I started again.
Aha! The smoke coming from that closet. Come out of there, you scoundrel, and en carte.
It was only in there to pick up the dry cleaning.
Take that, you filthy escargot.
This world history lesson was brought to you by your American Cancer Society, which says smoking can be injurious to your health.
Touché!
In more ways than one.
The two lines of investigation, the organizations and the police, were drawing steadily together like pincers. I could feel them closing. I told myself it was just a vast machine, and the machine was blind. But I hadn't fully realized its crushing weight and power. I returned to my desk from a lunch I could not remember having tasted.
Oh, Mr. Stroud, here's that list of non-renewed licenses from out-of-town taverns you asked for. It's from 10 years back.
Oh, thanks, Lucille.
I haven't had a chance to go through an alphabetizer yet if you want to leave them with me.
No, later, thanks. One of them would have my name on it. And my wife's. I carried them to my desk, figuring I'd feed them to the paper shredder. But Roy's door into my office was open. He was standing in it. For the moment, I consigned the file folder to my bottom drawer.
Been meaning to ask you, George, did you send that handkerchief to the lab to check possible fingerprints and have the laundry mark run down?
No, I'm sorry, Roy. I forgot.
You give it to me, will you? I'll do it right away.
Yeah, sure. I've got it right here on my desk.
Oh, and Hagen called. I want you to come right up.
These conferences with Hagen had daily become longer, more frequent, more bitter. It was cold comfort to have a clear understanding of the abyss that Hagen and Janeth, particularly Janeth, saw yawning before them. I wasn't thinking about Janeth, but about myself when I opened Hagen's door. Found myself staring at a photographic blow-up of the painting I'd hidden in my cellar at home.
We're going to run it on the cover of Newsways next issue with a follow-up story on the artist.
But the cover, is she that significant?
She's not. We have our own reasons for running the story. The first article on the artist generated a lot of reader interest. Now we run this lead. Priceless painting disappears. That'll pull our man out of the woodwork. Somebody will turn him in. Someone who knows he has the picture.
Hagen, who hadn't touched anything as plebeian as layout in the 15 years he'd risen to the top of Janet's empire, was meticulously laying out the copy on his desk. I stared over his shoulder at a 4x6 photo displaying one wall of a Louise Patterson exhibition 9 years back in the Miller Gallery. In the middle, surrounded by 4 other paintings, was the 2 hands of the Temptation of Judas. But it was another painting that grabbed my throat and squeezed the air out of me. 2 faces, 2 profiles facing one another in confrontation, called Study in Fury. This painting at that very moment was hanging, as it had for 2 years, on the wall of my office, just 6 floors below. By the time Newsways went to press, anyone who'd wandered in and out of my office since this insanity began was sure to make the connection. If I lasted until Newsways went to press.
George, what the devil's wrong? This thing has drifted more than a week. Why haven't we found our man?
I just shook my head and walked out. By the time I got back to my office, they were all there. Roy, Leon Temple, Phil Best, a couple of other leg men. It was apparent the second I stepped into the room that there'd been a break.
George, we've got him.
Where? Where is he?
Right here.
Here?
Go on, tell him, Leon.
Our man came into this building just a little while ago, right after lunch.
Well, I don't understand. Why would he come in here? Who is he?
We don't know yet, but we've got him. Leon slipped some cash to the staff of the Van Bart, let them know there'd be more.
Incidentally, I need my expense account.
Would you skip the non-essentials, please?
What Leon's trying to tell you, George, is that the staff of the Van Bart have all been scouting around this district in their free hours. After all, the Van Bart's only 3 blocks from here. And one of their porters picked up our guy and followed him right into this building.
I couldn't get over Roy's eyes. Calm, unflappable Roy, and his eyes blazed with evangelical zeal. All of them hauled him in that room, lusting for blood like hunters who'd treat an animal. And I was the animal. I was saying things like, "Good boy, Leon, that's using your head, Roy." And all the while I wondered if my reflexes had stopped working. I uncrossed my knees with the pieces of me fall off one by one like the rusted, useless wheels and cogs of a worthless machine that has outlived its purpose.
In about 2 minutes, we'll have every door and exit covered.
You're certain that he's the man we're looking for?
The porter's positive. He saw him crossing the street, followed him a block, almost lost him at the light, but ran and caught up just as our Mr. X entered this building. And unfortunately, he got to the elevator before the Van Bart guy could alert us.
Oh, I see.
In addition to the porter, a night bartender from the Van Bart, waitress from Gill's, and the art dealer have all arrived.
Well, nothing to do now but wait, huh?
If he doesn't come out during the afternoon, we're sure to pick him up at 5:30 when the building empties.
It'll be jammed. We'll have to cover every inch of the main floor.
He's in the bag. We can't miss. Agree, George?
In the bag. And I'll wait it out right along with him. Stay here till we get him. If necessary, I'll sleep here all night. I'm not going to leave this office till we've got this all sewed up. Roy would know that if a man came into a building and didn't go out, he must logically still be inside. And this inescapable conclusion must eventually be followed by one, and only one, logical course of action. Sooner or later, my staff must go through the building, floor by floor, office by office, looking for the only man in it who never went home. That man would be me.
You are listening to Mutual's presentation of The Zero Hour.
I'm Roger Staubach. I'm not here to talk to you as quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, but as an ex-serviceman who'd rather have his head beaten in on the football field than practice his skills in another war. And that's why I'm rooting for the world's most successful peacekeeping team, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It's worked for nearly a quarter of a century. In that time, the 15 Atlantic nations that make up NATO have been building teamwork like never before. In Europe, historically the world's greatest trouble spot, they have helped keep the peace and develop economic cooperation. They have generated a game plan through which problems like arms control and pollution are being attacked. Believe me, it's needed. The world's been kicked around enough. Let's help strengthen the NATO team. NATO works. Something else might not.
This message was brought to you by the Atlantic Council of the United States.
Here's a tip from your Better Business Bureau. Properly cooked vegetables add interest and enjoyment as well as nutrition to a meal. Cooking only long enough to make the vegetable tender tends to preserve more flavor and better texture than prolonged cooking. And when you buy vegetables, demand freshness. Check the characteristic signs of freshness, such as bright, lively color and crispness. Handle produce carefully. Someone must pay for vegetables lost by rough handling, and in the long run, it'll probably be you. Incidentally, don't buy just because of low price. It doesn't pay to buy more vegetables than you can properly store in your refrigerator or you can use without waste. Most vegetables can be stored for 2 to 5 days, and it's really penny foolish to buy fresh vegetables affected by decay. Because even if you do trim off the decayed area, rapid deterioration is likely to spread to the salvaged area. A few cents extra for vegetables in good condition is a good investment.
Tomorrow at this time, rest your eyes and listen here to this week's continuing study in suspense, Desperate Witness. I'm Rod Serling.
Today's episode brought to you in part by General Motors and Quaker State Motor Oil. This is the Zero Hour on Mutual Radio.
You have been listening to The Zero Hour, a presentation of the Mutual Broadcasting System in association with Hollywood Radio Theater. Heard every weekday at this time. Rod Serling is your host. Zero Hour is produced and directed by Elliott Lewis. The Hollywood Radio Theater theme was played by Ferranti and Teicher and is now available on United Artists Records and Tapes. Hugh Douglas speaking. Tune in tomorrow, and once again,
rest your eyes and listen here
to The Zero Hour.
This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
I'm Rod Serling. You're listening to The Zero Hour. Rest your eyes. Exercise your imagination. This week, Kenneth Fearing's study of a deadly obsession. Desperate Witness. Starring Richard Crenna, Keenan Wynn, and Julie Adams. In Elliott Lewis's production of The Zero Hour.
The Mutual Broadcasting System presents The Zero Hour. Sponsored in part by
General Motors and National Presto Industries. This is the Zero Hour on Mutual Radio.
George Stroud, a man in the middle, trapped by his own knowledge of events and the unrelenting hands of time. He is a prisoner on the 26th floor, pursued from below by those who would identify him, leaving his only avenue of escape, the floors above, where waits the man he knows to be the actual murderer. For George Stroud, time is running out, In a moment, the conclusion of Desperate Witness. But first, this word.
Life is a thread, one delicate dream. Don't stretch it, don't break it. For life can be long and life can be strong, and that's the way to make it.
Problem drinkers who drive cars were responsible for the deaths of 18,000 people last year. Men, women, children, babies, and very often themselves. More than 40 people every day.
Life is a thread, one delicate dream. Don't stretch it, don't break it. For life can be long and life can be strong, and that's the way to make it.
Get the problem drinker off the road for his sake and yours. Write to Drunk Driver, Box 1969, Washington, D.C. We'll tell you how you can help. A public service message on behalf of the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Sometime very early, I woke on the couch that I'd moved into my office. Put on my shoes and necktie, the only clothing I'd removed. And in a mental cloud, I went to my desk. A few minutes past 8. The day was the day. I still didn't know how I'd meet it, but I knew it was the day. The police would finish the checkup in Albany. Roy would follow up with a laundry mark on the handkerchief. And somebody would think of combing the building.
Oh, boy. There are a lot of unexpected...
Shortly before 9, the rest of the staff began to assemble. Leon Temple, Mafferson, Eddie, Roy.
Why don't you go home, George? There's nothing you can do here now, is there?
No, I'm staying.
You want to be in at the finish, right?
Right.
I don't understand it.
What don't you understand, Henry?
Why this guy hasn't come out? He's here, but where is he?
Well, maybe he left before we threw a line around the place.
Oh, not a chance.
Well, he may have simply walked in one door and out the other. Perhaps he knew he was being followed.
Oh, no. I'm the one who had the first contact. I know. That porter followed him right to the elevator. He took an express. He could be anywhere above the 18th floor. For all we know, he's somewhere up here in our own organization.
But what can we do about it?
He'll show.
I thought time was of the essence.
It is. Oh, what is it, Roy? Huh? What's the matter?
They're painting.
The one the man bought?
No, the one on the wall there.
Oh, that one. What about it?
Well, just that... we've all been in and out of here every day for a week. I don't think any of us recognized it's the same style as the Judas.
We can't all be art critics. All right, come on. It's time to spell the guys downstairs.
Wait, George, it occurs to me that if he doesn't show...
If he doesn't show, what?
Well, we could take those eyewitnesses with the building police, of course, and some of our own men and go through the whole place from top to bottom, cover every office. It'd take a couple of hours, but we'd know.
It sounds like a good idea, Roy. Yeah. But let's wait on it, shall we, until we've had a chance to clear it with Hagen. After all, this is his baby. I don't want to take the play away from him, do we?
Well, all right, we'll wait a while then.
The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. All but the one that had my face. I knew that every obstacle I threw in front of my staff only bought me minutes, an hour or two at the most. Everyone was on my back. Don Klosmeyer called 4 times. Louise Patterson was threatening to sue the magazine for libel. Don was trying to talk some sense into her.
Haven't you caught your murderer yet?
Well, we aren't looking for any murder, Miss Patterson. I've told you.
I know what you've told me. Think I got a memory like a sieve?
We've located the man who bought your picture, Miss Patterson. We believe we know where he is, and he'll be found at any moment. And we wish you'd come to the office so you can identify him. Of course, we'll pay you for your time and trouble. We'll give you $100 if you'll help us.
So you found your murderer, huh?
And, well, I want to impress upon you, we're not looking for a murderer, Miss Patterson. I assure you of that. We want this man in some altogether different connection.
Hogwash.
I beg your pardon?
Look, fool your readers. Don't try to fool Louise Patterson. $100? I don't take time off my work to identify any murderer for less than $250.
Well, I'm sorry I'm not authorized to go that high.
Well, you better get authorized, Sonny, or I don't go to the trouble of combing my hair.
The witnesses downstairs were getting restless. Several of my men called up about how long they'd have to wait. I still hadn't called Hagen. I expected Roy to walk in and ask why any second. Instead, it was Don Klosmeyer. He didn't have to tell me who was with him. I could hear her in my outer office through the door.
Can you imagine offering $100? Look at the money they spend around here for furniture.
I've got Patterson outside.
What's she doing up here, Don? The witnesses are all supposed to be in the lobby, covering the elevators, the stairways, the exits.
Oh, she's willing to help identify her man, but she wants a chair with a footstool, an ashtray, a pot of coffee, and $250.
$300.
George, this is Miss Patterson, the artist.
I stood up. My hand had gone to stone, but still I went through the motions, extended it. She didn't see my hand. She saw nothing in the room except her painting, Study in Fury, on my wall.
My Study in Fury? Oh, wow. Look how it's placed there on the wall. In perfect light. And that frame's got real taste.
Well, I admire all of your paintings, Miss Patterson.
Well, it's refreshing to find someone in this cheapskate organization who appreciates the finer...
Her eyes turned straight on me. She knew who I was.
Well, officer, what on earth can I do for you? I wasn't going too fast, was I?
Yes, ma'am. License plate?
Here.
It says here on the license, ma'am, you wear corrective lenses.
Oh, those.
Well, where are they, ma'am?
Oh, I wore those when I was nearsighted. But would you believe that by not wearing glasses, my eyes have grown stronger?
No, ma'am.
Well, officer, I'll just prove it to you. The license on your car is P77548.
I know, ma'am, but that's 10 feet away. What about that sign down the road there?
How can you expect me to read anything that far away?
Ma'am, even if you have 20/20 vision, driving 60 miles an hour, you've got just 4 seconds to read that sign. Half that if it's at night.
Okay, officer, I'm guilty. Give me my ticket.
Look, I'll tell you what, ma'am. If you have your glasses with you, put them on and I'll let you off with just a warning.
Oh, I do have them. There, how's that look?
Very pretty, ma'am. Now read me that sign down the road.
Okay. It says, road ends 500 feet. Oh, no.
This message was brought to you by the General Motors Corporation.
We'll return to our story in a moment.
Yes, land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the Redwood Forest to the ocean water. This land was made for you and me.
America, the greatest nation on earth. But as our country continues to grow, it must face the problems of expansion, such as the now ominous shortages of fuel and energy. There are ways you can help conserve these vital resources. Reduce thermostat settings by 2 or 3 degrees. Shut off lights and heat in rooms not in use. And reduce the consumption of electricity in late afternoon or evening. Remember, in conserving fuel and energy, you help yourself and your community.
This land was made for you and me.
Public service message is presented by the President's Office of Emergency Preparedness and the Office of Consumer Affairs.
Louise Patterson hesitated for no more than a heartbeat. Mine. There was no question that she'd recognize me, none whatsoever. I waited the eternal moment for her to say, "This is the one, this is the man you're looking for that beat me out of my own painting for $50. Hang him." And while I waited for the trap to be sprung, Clausmeyer added to my anguish.
Hey, that's where I saw the painting that reminded me of her other one. Right here on your wall. I knew I'd seen it somewhere. I think I've looked at it every day and not been aware of it. Why didn't you tell us you had a Patterson, George?
Oh, why? This painting isn't missing. I assumed you all knew I had it. It's been hanging there for over 2 years.
Yeah, but why didn't you tell us that she had painted it?
What was there to tell? I liked it. I bought it. It's been there ever since. Would you care for a drink, Miss Patterson?
Anything. A double anything.
Surely. It's very kind of you to help us. I imagine Don explained what we're doing.
You're looking for a murderer.
No, we're looking for a man.
Yes, I know. I know everything. Mr. Stroud, I really do.
I don't doubt it. I'm sure you do, Miss Patterson.
And to think you have my Study in Fury.
I live with it every day of my life. I love it.
You do? You really do?
Completely. I like all of your work. I have 4 or 5 hanging at home. I'm, as you might say, a kind of a one-man Louise Patterson fan club.
Well, where the hell's my study in fundamentals? The one your lousy magazine calls Judas.
I told her we'd try to get it back for her, George.
You promised me.
I didn't say we had it, Miss Patterson. I meant that if we found the man, we'd automatically find the picture.
Oh, yes, that does make sense. Doesn't it, Mr. Stroud? Or do you think, as I do, Mr. Stroud, that the man, this murderer, to keep from being discovered, has probably already destroyed the painting?
No, Miss Patterson, I don't think so. I have reason to believe your painting is quite safe. Unless, of course, the man should get nervous. But I fully believe it'll be recovered, provided everything else goes off all right. Do you fully understand?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Mr. Stroud. It had damn well better be safe since your magazine has set its value at priceless.
Oh, we're very careful about things like that, Miss Patterson. Here, let me refresh your drink.
Rye this time. You know, you hung that painting beautifully. You have a very good eye.
Yeah, I could do no less for such a distinctive work of art.
Of course you couldn't. Where do you want me to play watchdog, Klausmeyer?
She belted her second double and walked out with him. It was a reprieve, and I'd won it by sheer blackmail. Artists are curious. The slim thread that I'd framed her painting well and that I was a collector, even in a minor way, kept her quiet. I knew why she hadn't identified me. The fact I'd not destroyed her painting, my threat that I still would if she opened her mouth. I shudder to think how close I'd come to getting rid of that canvas. But she could still make trouble. She was erratic enough. My relief was no more than a spasm in time, because Roy was back, and this time there was no more stall.
George, I'm going to lose my witnesses downstairs unless we get some action. Did you clear it with Hagen?
Oh, I'm sorry, Roy. I forgot.
Look, you're in charge. You don't need Hagen.
All right, Roy. Get started. But I want to be kept informed of every move. Let me know what floor you start on, which direction you're working on, and where you're going.
Okay.
What a price. I wonder if any other man on earth has ever watched his whole life go to bits and pieces, carrying with it the lives of those close to him without a silent protest.
Stroud. Roy here. We're on the 18th floor now. All exits closed, all down elevators being stopped for inspection. There's just one way to go. Up.
There were bulletins from floors 19, 20, 21. 5 floors till they would get to me. As the distance narrowed, the time shortened. I could only reach out to one person. My wife.
Hello?
Georgette?
Who were you expecting?
Hello, why were you running?
Oh, I was outside. You know, a gopher ate the roots of our baby elm tree. It just fell over.
Sorry, hon. I'll get you another one, huh? Oh, I'm so sorry.
George, it's not that important. You sound so worried. It's just a gopher in a tree.
Yes.
George, what's wrong? Did you call me because something's wrong?
No, sweetheart. No, I just wanted to talk for a minute, that's all.
Well, let's talk.
I love you. After I hung up, I sat there. Where would I go now? What would I fight with? I had to make one last desperate effort to put it all together. To survive.
Some gifts don't do anything, but Presto gifts do almost everything.
Presto gifts, they do things for a woman.
Give her the Presto slow cooker. It browns the meat, then simmers the complete meal for her for hours. even while she's gone all day. No watching or stirring.
Presto gift, the evening for a woman.
Give her a Tilton Store portable range, the lightweight electric range she can take anywhere. And she can tilt it up for compact and easy storage.
Presto gift, they do things for a woman.
Give her Presto's Create and Serve pan, the all-in-one pan that cooks and serves almost any dish, from stews to fondues, right at the table. This year, give the gifts that do almost everything. Give Presto gifts.
Presto gifts, they do things for a woman.
The Zero Hour continues after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barbara Streisand.
Children. Mentally retarded children. There are so many causes of mental retardation. Some we know, some we don't. I can't say to you, if you do this or if you do that, you won't have a retarded child. But through research, we hope one day to be able to say that. In the meantime, there's the help we can give to those already born mentally retarded, because the retarded can be helped, but it takes a lot of money. If you'd like to cut the odds a bit in favor of the next mother and father who will bring a child into this uncertain world, whether it's your child, a grandchild, or the child of a friend, support the work of your local association of the National Association for Retarded Children. Cast a little bread upon the waters.
Apparently, I'd stayed longer on the phone with my wife than I thought. The phone hadn't been in its cradle more than 10 seconds when there was another bulletin from Roy.
We're starting the 22nd floor now, George.
That's fine, thanks. The choice was simple. It was Janet or me. I got up out of my chair and I headed to the elevator with a half-formed idea that there might be some safety in the very heart of the enemy's territory. Steve Hagen's at Janet's offices on the 32nd floor. Inside the elevator, I punched the button. I was alone. The steel box, a momentary haven. I leaned against the wall and I closed my eyes and I tried to shut it all out. I heard the doors open, stepped out, and I started toward the executive offices. But these weren't the executive offices. This was the accounting floor. The 22nd floor. Without realizing it, I'd punched the wrong button and I'd gone down. I could hear their voices coming up the stairwell. I raced back to the elevator and I punched the up button.
Hey, someone get in the elevator.
I held my finger on the button, but the elevator didn't move. I could hear them through the door.
He went in here. I saw him.
Did you recognize him?
No, I didn't.
After an interminable moment, I was going up. Even though no one had recognized me, I got off at the 31st floor, I punched the elevator down, and I walked up to the 32nd. I had to sit in Hagen's outer office. Janet was inside, but the secretary refused to announce me. Big conference going on. I waited, pacing all the time up and back in the reception room, wondering what floor the pack had reached by now. I was looking out the window when I heard a door open. For a moment, I thought they'd reached here. It was Steve Hagen.
George, I've been trying to reach you. Come on in.
In Hagen's office, besides Hagen, the office held Earl Janeth, several big stockholders, editors, lawyers for both sides, and Fred Steichel, managing editor of Jeanette Donahue. All of them looked slightly embarrassed, except Steichel, who seemed apologetic, and Janeth, who radiated more than his customary assurance. He came forward and he heartily shook my hand. And I saw that the self-confidence was instead nervous tension mounting to near hysteria.
George, I'm very glad to see you. You can frame what I'm about to say on paper and issue a bulletin to the entire staff. I'm terribly sorry I couldn't have had the pleasure of speaking to each and every one of them personally. I have consented to step aside and prevent a merger with the firm of Jeanette Donahue. The entire staff stays on, I hope they'll all give Mr. Steichel the same loyalty they gave to me and to Steve.
Everybody shook hands. It was all very polite. And they left, leaving Hagen, Janeth, and myself. And they just stood and looked at each other in shock. It was as though they'd forgotten I was there. The door opened before I could get to it. It was Roy. Behind him were a porter from Gill's and a waiter from the Van Barth.
We've drawn a blank so far, George. Only thing left of these offices. I think we should go through them thoroughly.
Now, drop it, Roy. The assignment's killed.
What? You mean send them all away?
That's right, send them all away. The conspiracy problem's resolved. Janeth Enterprises is under new management.
But what about the witnesses? You can't just take the time like this.
There's $20 extra. I'll sign the vouchers later.
Well, that's what Mr. Hagen wants.
That's what he wants.
Hello? Yes, who's there? It's for you, Stroud.
No?
Mr. Stroud, you're a tough man to find.
Who is this?
The cabbie on 58th Street, remember? You done sent me the other 20. I found your man. My partner picked up the guy you were looking for Saturday night around 10:30. He identified him from the picture you gave me. When are you coming by, huh?
I'll be there tomorrow morning. Thanks. During my conversation on the phone, Janeth, as though sleepwalking, had gone into his own office. I started toward it.
Don't go in there, Stroud. Let him alone.
All right, Steve. Then you tell him. There's a certain cabbie on 58th Street who identified Janeth as the fare he took from there to your address just minutes after Pauline Dulles was murdered. There's no alibi. Janeth never got the message. Just how long it took him to fall 32 floors, I don't know. But it was all over for Earl Janeth. The crowd was still milling around when I came out of the building for the first time in 2 days. The news flash was already on the radio as I walked into the nearest bar. Belted a couple of drinks. Louise Patterson was in there.
Come on, I'll buy you a drink after that circus in the street. Then I want my painting back.
You mean the Judas?
You know what I mean. I mean my study in fundamentals. Where is it? What have you done with it?
Nothing. It's home. Why would I have destroyed it?
Because it proves you killed Pauline Dulles.
I didn't kill her.
Then why were we looking for you?
To find the painting. Remember, it's priceless.
Devil talk. You're worse than that worm Klausmeyer. I want my painting back. That was the deal.
No go. No, I bought it. It's mine. I won't give it up.
But you only paid $50 for it.
You know, I learned a lot. That painting gave me an education. I'll never give it up. I'll tell you what I'll do, though. I'll give you the one in my office, the Study in Fury, and one of the others I have at home in trade.
3 others.
2.
I'll drink to that. I can't get over it. Your boss jumps from the window because his business collapsed.
Everyone has his own reason.
I don't understand that. My business comes apart every time I finish a painting.
You're luckier than he was. Well, thanks for the drink.
Have another?
No, thanks. I'm going home. Where every good married man should go.
You think they'll ever find who killed that woman?
Probably. It won't matter now. I stepped outside. I took a long, deep breath, and I headed for my car. The big, silent, invisible clock was moving along as usual. Only this time it was off my back. At least for a little while.
You are listening to Mutual's presentation of The Zero Hour.
Did you say God? Well, I know him by everything you say and do. Did you say God? Well, I've seen him
This message is brought to you by Religion in American Life.
Hi, this is Buddy Merrill from the Lawrence Welk Band, and I'd just like to say, if you're a veteran just returning to civilian life, the Veterans Administration urges you to take advantage of your rights under the GI Bill. If you need additional education, you may have as much as 36 months of schooling coming to you. If you haven't finished high school, you may do so and still have your full GI school time coming to you for college or other education. You get paid every month while you work toward your diploma. So, why not get on with that GI schooling? Don't let the opportunities that could be yours pass you by because you aren't prepared. Don't let the rights you earn while in uniform go unused. This is Buddy Merrill saying, get full information from VA. Get started in school under the GI Bill and follow the road to success that millions of veterans have taken.
That concludes this week's production of The Zero Hour, Kenneth Fearing's Desperate Witness. Next week, we'll begin another exciting dramatization of a tale of mystery and suspense. We'll tell our story in 5 days, at the same time, Monday through Friday. So on Monday, rest your eyes and listen here to The Zero Hour. I'm Rod Serling.
Today's episode brought to you in part by General Motors and National Presto Industries. This is The Zero Hour on Mutual Radio.
You have been listening to The Zero Hour, a presentation of the Mutual Broadcasting System in association with Hollywood Radio Theater. Heard every weekday at this time. Rod Serling is your host. Zero Hour is produced and directed by Elliott Lewis. The Hollywood Radio Theater theme was played by Ferranti and Teicher and is now available on United Artists Records and Tapes. Hugh Douglas speaking. Tune in Monday, and once again,
rest your eyes and listen here
to The Zero Hour.
This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.